Hello there, you're watching Al24 News live from Algiers. Coming up next in our World News edition. World number one tennis player Novak Djokovic has had his visa to enter Australia dramatically revoked on his arrival in Melbourne amid a surge or a huge backlash over a vaccine exemption plus. In India, new COVID cases jumped nearly 4 times since the start of the year. Cases soared to 90,928 in the past 24 hours as New Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata experienced a surge in infections. Also coming up in our World News program, France hits more than 330,000 cases and Italy mandates jabs for those over 50. After demonstrations against the fuel price rise spread quickly across the country, protesters took over government buildings and reportedly stormed the airport in Almaty. Kazakhstan government resigned and dozens of protesters killed. President Joe Biden blames Donald Trump for the U.S. Capitol riot as he marks the anniversary of the attack on the seat of American democracy. Thank you for joining us, and we start with this piece of information. The representative of the Polisario Front in France, member of the National Secretariat, Mohamed Sidati, confirmed that the French National Assembly session to study the position of its country's government on the developments in Western Sahara today, Thursday, comes at the right time to push Paris to review its illegal policies and adopt an approach more positive in line with international law instead of siding with the expansionist Moroccan policy. And we move to another piece of story now, and Novak Djokovic is awaiting his Australian Open fate in a Melbourne immigration hotel as the world number one mounts a legal challenge against Australia's decision to cancel his visa. Djokovic's lawyers succeeded in a bid to stop him from being deported on Thursday, with a full hearing in the federal circuit court now scheduled for Monday. The tennis champion spent 8 hours detained at Melbourne Airport overnight before Australian Border Force officials announced that he had been denied entry into the country on Thursday morning. They cited a failure to meet Australia's COVID vaccination exemption requirements. Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, said there are many visas granted. If you have a visa and you are double vaccinated, you are very welcome to come here. But if you are not double vaccinated and you are not an Australian resident or citizen, well, you can't come. Let's have a listen.
There should be no special rules for Novak Djokovic at all, none whatsoever. And so if medical exemptions have been provided by medical professionals, and that's been furnished to him as a proviso for him to get on that plane, well, that will have to stack up when he arrives in Australia. But he'll be treated no different to anyone else, and my view is he should be treated no different to anyone else.
As part of a zero-COVID policy by Chinese government in bid to curb the spike of COVID-19 cases around the country, authorities have imposed more restrictions in the province of Henan. The 1 million resident city reported 64 new cases in the last few hours, and despite the fact that this number is not high so far compared to the other countries, China has imposed more restrictions, which include a complete lockdown on all residents of the city. Still, Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with his Eritrean Foreign Minister Osman Salah. Wang Yi said that 4 Chinese foreign ministers have been visiting Africa on their first tour for 32 consecutive years. Hosam Berkan reports.
Chinese State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi stated in a joint press conference with Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs that Chinese foreign ministers have been visiting Africa on their first tour for 32 consecutive years, which shows the solidarity and cooperation between China and Africa, and also shows that Chinese diplomacy has always been on the side of developing countries. Wang Yi added that there is no truth in the debt trap narrative and that China will support Africa to realize a post-pandemic recovery.
There is no truth in the debt trap narrative of Africa. It's simply a narrative trap created by forces who do not want to see Africa's development. If there is any trap for Africa, it's the trap of poverty and underdevelopment. China will work with any country that's friendly to Africa and will help it speed up poverty eradication and break away from underdevelopment, so that the continent can realize post-pandemic recovery and forge an early path for independent and sustainable development.
This meeting of Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi comes after their visit to the Eritrean capital Asmara, where Eritrean President Isaias expressed his will to learn from Chinese development experiences and strengthen cooperation with Beijing in various fields of endeavor, asking Wang to convey his sincere greetings to President Xi Jinping.
90,928 new COVID-19 cases were recorded in the past 24 hours in India, with a surge of infections in the cities of New Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata, cities likely without an increase in hospitalizations. COVID-19 infections skyrocketed in the country for 4 times since the beginning of the year, mainly affecting cities. However, there is a growing fear of a surge in infections in rural areas. And Italy made COVID-19 vaccination mandatory for adults over the age of 50, becoming one of just a few European countries to do so in an effort to relieve burden on its healthcare system and cut fatalities. The measure goes into effect immediately and will last till June the 15th. Let's follow this report.
Since the outbreak began in February 2020, Italy has recorded almost 138,000 coronavirus deaths, the second largest toll in Europe after the United Kingdom. The government of Prime Minister Mario Draghi had already made vaccination mandatory for teachers and health workers, and all employees have had to be vaccinated or present negative tests before entering to the workplace since October last year. The order issued on Wednesday makes it more difficult for workers over the age of 50 to opt for a test rather of vaccination. It was not immediately obvious what the penalty would be for individuals who disobeyed the rule, which took effect on February 15. After a 2.5-hour cabinet meeting marked by squabbles within Draghi's multi-party coalition, the decree was passed. A right-wing minister published a statement criticizing the over 15 vaccine limit, calling it without scientific foundation, given that the vast majority of patients hospitalized with COVID are well over 60.
Still with COVID-19, the US is still witnessing the unprecedented spike of COVID-19 cases as daily infections surpass 400,000 high. US hospitals are leaving large numbers of hospitalization and a considerable shortage in healthcare staff. Experts stated that the surge of cases will continue to rise over the next days. Usama Ayadi reports.
The early days of the new year do not feel like a fresh start for the US, as the country is living a record soar in infection rates. After delaying the reopening of schools in most of the country's states, the U.S. recorded 1 million infections on Monday and a daily rate of 400,000, which triggered panic around the country and among the population.
We've already placed the largest order in the world. Now I'm doubling that order. These pills are going to dramatically decrease hospitalizations and deaths from COVID-19.
The USA is living a spike in hospitalizations and deaths, which range between Delta variant and the new strain Omicron. Health experts in the United States expect more infection cases, considering the Omicron variant an extremely transmissible strain of the virus.
If you have a less of a percentage of severity, when you have multifold more people getting infected, the net amount is you're still going to get a lot of people that are going to be needing hospitalization. And that's the reason why we're concerned about stressing and straining the hospital system.
Hospitals across the U.S. are facing an unprecedented soar in cases of Omicron variant, and getting thrown into disarray as the latest mutation causes impacts that are proving to be different from the earlier COVID-19 surges. This time, hospitals are dealing with serious staff shortages as large numbers of healthcare workers were infected. People are showing up at emergency rooms in large numbers in hopes of getting tested for COVID-19, putting more strain in the system, and a surprising share of patients, which reached 2/3 in some places, are testing positive while waiting in the hospitals.
COVID-19 around the world is still hitting with high numbers that has never been reached since the pandemic, and the measures taken to face this war are in this report by Miriam Zian.
In Turkey, the health ministry reported 467,000 new coronavirus infections in the last 24 hours, the highest daily figure ever. As the Omicron strain became dominant in Turkey, the number of cases has more than doubled in just a week. In the United States, COVID-19 cases increased by 98% over the last week, raising concerns about the Omicron variant's rapid spread in the country. Hospitalizations are currently at a number of 14,800 a day, more than 63% in comparison to the previous week, and number of deaths increased by 5%. For residents of the northwestern Chinese city Xi'an, the start of 2022 looks a lot like 2020. Between December the 9th, 2021 and January 4th, some 1,600 cases of COVID-19 were detected, pushing the Chinese authorities to impose a lockdown to stop the spread of the virus. However, the confinement caused a public outcry, chaos, and critiques.
French President Emmanuel Macron is facing harsh criticism after using abusive and divisive words as he resorted to using slang to say he wants to clamp down on people who do not have a vaccine against the coronavirus. Hazem Berkan reports.
After delivering daring warnings to citizens in France who have not yet been vaccinated against COVID-19, that he would put as much pressure on them as possible by limiting access to vital parts of life, President Emmanuel Macron has faced opposition and disarray in parliaments.
We have to tell unvaccinated people you will no longer be able to go to restaurants. You will no longer be able to go to cafes. You will no longer be able to go to the theater. And you will no longer be able to go to the cinema.
Macron, who has not yet formally confirmed his bid for re-election in April, was criticized by competitors who accused him of overstepping the mark with his remarks.
Une partie des Français en les traitant de non-citoyens.
A president should not say that. Emmanuel Macron is unworthy of his office.
Opposition members in parliament protested Macron's comments, while Health Minister Olivier Véran sought to defend the president's choice of words. The heated parliamentary debate continued early Wednesday morning and was then suspended again.
And now Kazakhstan's President Kassym Tokayev said he has appealed to a Russian-led security bloc for help after failing to repress protests in the ex-Soviet nation that has seen state buildings burned and casualties from both sides. Islam Sid reports.
Kazakhstan President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev requested help from the CSTO, a military alliance that brings together 6 former Soviet republics, including Russia, to put an end to the riots in the country, which he described as a terrorist threat.
Those are real terrorists. We know very well that they are currently rampaging in Almaty and in other cities. They are seizing buildings and infrastructure, and most importantly, are seizing the premises where small arms are located. There's currently a battle ongoing near Almaty with the air forces of the Defense Ministry, a stubborn battle. These terrorist gangs are international gangs. They have received extensive training abroad, and their attack on Kazakhstan should be viewed as an act of aggression. Today, I appeal to the heads of CSTO state to assist Kazakhstan in overcoming this terrorist threat.
As a response to Tokayev's request, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, the current chair of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, said the organization considered the threats to the national security and sovereignty of Kazakhstan before reaching the decision. the CSTO decided to deploy peacekeeping forces to the country for a limited time in order to stabilize conditions in Kazakhstan. Protests have resulted in the burning of state buildings, killing dozens of anti-government rioters, 12 members of the security forces fell dead, and 353 injured during the operation to restore order in the main city Almaty. Kazakhstan's Ministry of Health reported that more than 1,000 people have been injured since the protests began, with 400 taken to hospital. According to local media reports, about 2,000 people have been arrested so far in the anti-government protests. Rakan Almaty and more yet are being taken into custody. Amid these violent protests in Kazakhstan, the White House denied Russian blames, accusing the U.S. about causing the riots in Kazakhstan, calling rumors to the contrary crazy Russian claims.
We have obviously, as you noted, we have seen that, and we're monitoring reports of protests in Kazakhstan. We support calls for calm, for protesters to express themselves peacefully, and for authorities to exercise restraint. There are some crazy Russian claims about the U.S. being behind this, so let me just use this opportunity to convey that as absolutely false and clearly a part of the standard Russian disinformation playbook we've seen a lot of in past years.
Tokayev has vowed to take harsh measures to suppress the unrest and declared a 2-week state of emergency for the whole country. Despite the protests began over the increase of prices for liquefied petroleum gas, their size and rapid spread suggested they reflect wider discontent in the country that has been under the rule of the same party since gaining independence from the Soviet Union in 1991.
And now the U.S. Democrats commemorated on Thursday 1-year anniversary of Capitol attack, which took place in Washington, D.C., led by supporters of the former President of the United States, Donald Trump. President Joe Biden delivered a speech addressing the nation over the acts of the Capitol riots, which he considered an attempt to prevent peaceful transition of power. Ayedi Usama reports.
January 6 is the day to commemorate 1-year anniversary of U.S. Capitol attack, which was described by American officials to be unprecedented assault of the country's democracy. Capitol riots witnessed the deployment of former President Donald Trump's supporters to Washington, D.C. as Congress was meeting to certify Joe Biden as U.S. President.
We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored.
President Joe Biden addressed the nation on Thursday in a speech to show his refusal to such acts in the United States, and he added that the former President Donald Trump lied to the nation and tried to prevent the peaceful transition of power.
Even before the first ballot was cast, the former president was preemptively sowing doubt about the election results. He built his lie over months. It wasn't based on any facts.
President Joe Biden also explained that presidency of the country should unite the people and not work only on individuals, and that the authority of the nation will always be transmitted peacefully. The Vice President of the United States also addressed the nation from Capitol as all Democrats stand together for democracy and country and deny similar acts of what happened in Capitol.
I will stand in this breach. I will defend this nation. And I will allow no one to place a dagger at the throat of democracy.
President Joe Biden and his vice president, in addition to House Speaker and leading Democrat figures, held a moment of silence for the people who were put to death in the U.S. Capitol. As reported by U.S. President, the acts of violence were meant to destabilize the country's sovereignty and peace. He added that he would never permit such acts to take place in the United States.
A mob breaking windows, kicking in doors, breaching the Capitol, American flags on poles being used as weapons, as spears, fire extinguishers being thrown at the heads of police officers. A crowd that professes their love for law enforcement assaulted those police officers, dragged them, sprayed them, stomped on them. Over 140 police officers were injured.
A year after the violent assault of the U.S. Capitol, Americans remain deeply concerned about the health of their democracy and about the violence against the government.
Milorad Dodik, the Bosnian Serb leader, was sanctioned by the Biden administration, alleging his destabilizing corrupt acts in the Western Balkans. Dodik was charged by the Treasury Department of sabotaging a 1995 peace agreement and of corruption. Miriam Ziena reports.
Washington imposed additional sanctions on Milorad Dodik, the Bosnian Serb leader, as well as other officials, urging them to end activities of corruption. In a statement, the U.S. Treasury Department accused the Bosnian leader of corruption and of destabilizing territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the media outlet Alternativna Television based in Banja Luka, incriminating Milorad Dodik of using it for his personal interest to facilitate the accomplishment of his own agenda. As a response, the media denounced the Treasury sanctions, saying that it is a direct attack on media freedoms, and also dismissed accusations of bonds with Dodik.
We are surprised with such a decision and regard as extremely trivial that a great state should take individual institutions about ties between our media house and politicians as credible sources.
The first execution of the designations was the freezing of Dodik and ATV's U.S. assets and preventing Americans to engage with them on June, as an effort from the U.S. government to target any threats to peace and stability in the Western Balkans. In a declaration, Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, Brian E. Nelson, said that Milorad Dodik's destabilizing corrupt activities and attempts to dismantle the Dayton Peace Accords, motivated by his own self-interest, threaten the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the entire region, and that the U.S. will not hesitate to act against those who pursue corruption, destabilization, and the division at the expense of their own people, as well as against those who enable and facilitate this behavior.
And for more world news, let's follow this report by Sid Islam.
Anti-mafia authorities in Italy have credited a Google Street View picture for exposing the location of a member of Sicily's Stira Mafia group, who escaped a Rome prison in 2002 partway through a life sentence for murder. German police have pulled trained dogs from duty after new law on animal rights prohibited the methods used to train and control canines when arresting criminals and banning the use of punitive stimuli to train or control dogs. The new law has been applied on January 1st. Japan and Australia met in a virtual summit to sign a landmark defense agreement after more than a year of talks. The agreement allows both sides to tighten collaboration between their military and stands against China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. An asteroid nearly a kilometer long is set to fly by Earth at a speed of 19.56 km per second in a little over a week. However, an impact is unlikely to happen. The stony space rock will serve as a spectacle for stargazers. NASA has calculated the rock will pass our little blue planet at a distance of around 1.98 million kilometers away on January 18th.
And we wrap up our World News edition with some sports news in this report.
Chelsea seized control of their Carabao Cup semi-final tie against Tottenham, beating their London rivals 2-0 in the first leg thanks to an early strike by Kai Havertz. And a known goal by Spurs defender Ben Davies, the Blues swamped their visitors right from the kick-off. And after a mix-up in Spurs defense, in the 5th minute, half an hour later, the hosts got their second goal, albeit with large slice of luck, as Tanganga headed away a Hakim Ziyech free kick, only from the ball to rebound into the Spurs net off Davies' shoulder. The win detonated the hopes of Spurs under former Chelsea coach Antonio Conte of winning a first trophy since lifting the competition in 2008. After Alcoyano dominated the first half, Real took the lead through their first effort on target when Eder Militao headed home Rodrigo's corner 6 minutes before the break. Midway through the half, Dani Vega scored a fantastic equalizer, turning in from the right flank before hitting an unstoppable shot past Andre Lonin. Marco Asensio's goal coming off the bench ensured there was not a repeat of last year's Real Madrid's shock Copa del Rey defeat to Alcoyano. Moments after coming off the bench also, Escoran throw and nudged the ball past Jose Juan, who then unconsciously put the ball into this own goal. Lionel Messi has tested negative for COVID-19 and has returned to France, where he will resume training in the coming days, according to the Paris Saint-Germain. Last week, the 7-time Ballon d'Or winner tested positive for the virus in Argentina, but returned to Paris on Wednesday. On Monday, he was absent from Paris Saint-Germain's 4-0 French Cup victory over Vence. The club has now stated if Messi will be available for Sunday's Ligue 1 match against Lyon, which would be their first since the winter break.
That's all for me, Nadia Kasmi, and the rest of the team. The news continues on Al 24 News. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.